just going to do a quick video on changing strings on the bass. I just thought while I'm chucking some new strings on, I'll do a video on how to do it so that you guys learning can learn how to do it properly. One thing that you'll hear people say is after you put new strings on, they'll stretch a bit and your bass or guitar or whatever will go out of tune a bit, it'll go flat. That's not true. That's basically a result of not doing the process properly. So we're going to show you the proper way to do it so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so one thing is doing this process wrong is going to make them go flat afterwards. The other problem that you can have with a bass or a guitar going flat is the machine heads themselves. If these things are weak and can't hold the tension, especially on a bass that's got these big thick strings on them, then those things are going to be undoing, and that's going to make it go flat as well, in which case they need replacing the machine heads up there. So we'll go through right from the start. So I've still got the old strings on here at the moment. Okay, so our first job is to get rid of those. Cool. So we'll look at a couple of other checks and things that you do as part of this process. One thing that I always do personally, I've got active pickups in this bass, which means I have a battery in the back here powering those. Okay, every time I change my strings, I change the battery as well. Okay, I've actually already done that. You don't need to watch me do that. 2 screws, take the panel off, change the battery over, screw it back on. That process is nice and easy. Cool. So the first thing to do is to get rid of these. So we'll just loosen them off. Now the way I loosen them off is I do the outside 2 first. Okay, so I take the tension off that one and that one. Okay, not entirely crucial, but my theory on doing that is by leaving these 2 center ones tensioned, the tension is going to stay on the center of the neck as you undo them, rather than, say, if you undid them from the bottom and then got to this top one, you'd be holding the tension on one side of the neck. Okay, which over time could cause a bit of twisting in it, which you don't want. Cool, so we're just going to loosen those off. These strings are rubbish now, so we can just pull those out of there and we're going to get rid of them. Okay, so when I change strings on a guitar, I'll do a video for guitar as well. There are a couple of slight differences. One being with a guitar you can use a string winder. I haven't seen string winders here that are made for basses. Which means you just got to turn them by hand. Okay, it's just a speed thing. So what I do there is I basically just loosen it off until it's loose enough to pull it out and just pull it off the top. Cool. And then I'm just going to hang those, do each one. So normally the way I would do this is I use like a coffee table and I'd sit the bass flat in front of me, which makes it nice and easy to work on it. The only reason I'm not doing that for the video is to make it easier to show the different parts of the bass in the camera shot without having to be too far away from it. It does make it hard. Make sure I'm turning them the right way. I'm loosening them. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, because I want to pull these through the bridge end, okay, so rather than trying to get all that stuff through there, I'm going to take cutters. So I'm using pliers today because that's just what I could find that have a cutter in here. Normally I'd use side cutters, but it's still going to do the job. Just not quite as easily. Normally with side cutters you can just bang do it, but there I've just got to work it back and forward a bit to get it to break properly. So that gives me a nice straight end now that will just pull straight through the bridge at the end. Okay, so on this particular guitar the strings go right through the body. Try not to drop it, and pull out the back. Cool. And then I've got little cups on the back here that the string ends sit into, so I just want to make sure that they don't fall out as I go, or if they do, make sure I put them back in. Cool, so I'll just do that with all the strings. So normally, once you get these strings off, the next thing I'd do would be to actually clean the bass, because having the strings out of the way is a really good time to do that. Obviously for getting in under the strings and that sort of thing. Okay, I'm not going to do that today just for the purposes of time for the video. But yeah, normally I'll clean it later with the strings on. Cool. So one of the adjustments that we'll look at later on is a truss rod adjustment. So today what I'm doing is I'm actually going to put a heavier gauge of string on. Okay, because I kind of different times I use different strings. So the ones I've just taken off run from 45 through to 105. The ones I'm putting on are slightly heavier, so they go from 55 through to 110. Cool. Which the truss rod runs down the full length of the neck on the inside. Okay, so I've got a little panel up here with a screw in it. Okay, which I can unscrew, and then I have an Allen key fitting in here. And basically what the truss rod is it's a bent rod that fits inside this neck. So by turning it, what I can do is pull tension on and off that neck, because what happens is these big thick bass strings take a fair bit of tension to tune them up, which is pulling this neck forward. Okay, so what we need to do is, with the truss rod, is counteract that a bit to pull back against it, and that's all about getting the right string height and things like that. So there are technical ways to set this all up with certain things at certain frets and feeler gauges and certain distances and all that, which is getting really technical. If you're getting into that stuff, you probably want to have a professional go through all that, or there are videos on doing it, but it does get a lot more complicated. You've got to have all the right tools and that sort of thing. So this is just a basic string change that I'd normally do when my strings just get dead. Cool. So open the packet up there, my 4 strings. Cool, so I'm just going to start with the G for my first string. Cool, so I'm going to pull that right through that hole from the back. Some bridges, they'll just come through on top here. So this one comes through from the back, and different bridges are going to have different setups, but see there's just a notch there that needs to sit into. Now what I want to do is make sure that I've pulled that all the way through, okay? So that, because if I leave it loose and then I do it up and tension it there, it's going to bend the string and not be right at the end, okay? So I'm just going to bring that up now to the head. So strings, obviously when they make them, they're made for different lengths of guitar or bass, and they make them a little bit longer so that they know that they're going to fit whatever model you're trying to put them on, basically. So what we're going to do here is we need to trim the end off the string. Just get my camera in the right place. Cool. So what we want to end up with on our machine head here is we don't want a whole bunch of string all bundled up, because what's going to happen if you're going to end up with this big tangled mess, and then what can happen is those bits can move in that mess, so we want this to be nice and tidy. So we want enough string on there that's going to hold it well in place, but we don't want too much that it's going to become a mess. Okay, so this is the machine head I'm aiming at. So I come past it by about that far, roughly. Okay, I don't take a measurement every time, it's just a rough thing that I do. Cool. These strings will hopefully cut a bit easier because they don't have the fabric covering. Okay, so here is where one of the major mistakes is made. Okay, so a lot of machine heads on guitars just have a hole through them, and this will just go through the hole and then it tensions up. Okay, so on the bass here, okay, and they won't all be like this, but a lot of them are. You see you've got a slot. So the mistake people make is they think that that works the same as the hole, and they stick the string straight through it like that. Okay, but these actually have an extra feature, which is a hole down through the center of them. Okay, so that is going right into the center of that machine head, and that's going to help keep this solidly in place. Okay, the reason the slot's there is because the string needs to come out of there. Okay, and I'm just going to bend it over. So that's just coming out that slot on one side now. And what I'm going to do is with this hand, I'm going to hold tension on it while I tighten it. Okay, so again, different basses will be different. Sometimes you have all four of these in a line, but you just want to take note of which side you want the string to come out of the machine head so that it lines up with the nut here. Okay, so on one like this, generally they're all on the insides of the machine head, okay, towards the center. So I'm just going to tighten that up, and I'm going to, with this other hand, I'm keeping the tension on it as it goes, because I want to pull it nice and tight on that machine head. Okay, and what I want to do is, because I want to keep this tidy, I want to be a bit directive as to where the string goes when I come round for that first turn. Okay, so I want that first bit I put in, I want that to be at the bottom, so I'm just going to make sure that this, as it comes around, the string sits right on top of that last one. So you can see at this point how having too much string on there is going to be a problem. You're going to start running out of space. Cool, so we just want to keep that tension on there all the time. Cool, so you'll notice that this here now is hitting all the frets. Okay, that's normal at this stage, because what happens as we bring the other strings on and as we tension everything up, it's going to pull this neck back up. Okay, so we don't want to make any adjustments here until we've got all these strings tensioned up and we've got that neck sitting where it's going to be in a tensioned position. Cool. So that was my 55, so that's the G there. So the numbers get higher as the string gets thicker. Okay, so a higher number is a thicker gauge of string. So my next one in this particular set is a 75, but depending on the set you're fitting, those numbers may be different. Cool, so I'm not going to worry too much at the moment about tensioning from the outside in or anything like that, because I'm not tensioning them right up. At this point, I'm just basically getting them seated in place. So we're just going to repeat that same process now for the next string. So same thing here. I'm going to come past it by a similar distance. Again, not a measurement, just a rough guesstimate. Okay, center that down in the center, pushing it down as far as it goes, bending it over in that slot, keeping the tension on it with this other hand. And then winding it up. Cool, so sometimes I'll come up as it just goes around that first bend. I'll just come up and bend it again just to help it around the corner, because we want that to be keeping nice and tight on there. So there'll be another process we do once we start tuning this up, that will help to make sure that these are nice and tight up here as well. Because if they weren't, then they would loosen off and the bass would be going out of tune. So same thing as before. I'm going to push that first run down. This is much less awkward when you have it flat on a table in front of you. Okay, so I want to have the first runs down and then have the other ones go over top of it so that the string isn't crossing over itself at any point. And obviously as the strings get a bit thicker, they're going to get a little bit tougher to work with as well. Cool, so that one's just starting to tension there. Just get my screen back. There we go. Cool. Next one now in this set will be the 90. And we're going to repeat that process again. If you think you got it, this will be a good time. You can jump forward a bit. Have a bit of a fast forward there until we've got these on. Same thing again, coming past there a bit. Just turn that where I'm going to get a nice slot coming out. Okay, so now I'm coming to the other side of the head there. These are going to be going in the other way. What's that? Low battery. Just plug my computer in. Plug reach. There we go. So again, I'm just helping it bend around that first corner. And there, I'll just want to make sure that it comes on top. So you'll see the length that I've cut the string to. I'm getting a good couple of full turns onto that machine head. Okay, making sure it's got a really good anchor point there. But I'm not getting too many turns on there that I start running out of space, hopefully. Obviously with the bigger string you need a bit more space as well. Cool. Alright, and then the big guy, the E string. Okay, so if you're going to be doing this, you should know how to tune a bass. I have got a video on doing that in my earlier videos. You can jump on my channel and find that. That's going to be our next process, but I imagine if you're jumping into changing strings, you well and truly know how to tune the thing by now. Cool, so these ones, some strings are a bit better than others in terms of the space they take up on here. Like the last ones I used with that material on them, the rotor sounds, they're quite good to work with at this end because of that material covering, and they keep the string nice and thin up at this end. Just make sure that you've got good room to fit it all on there. But sometimes I just like these thicker gauge ones as well, which of course the rotor sounds do come in a thicker gauge, but the store I buy them from just don't keep them in that gauge. These are the ones they have in the heavier gauge, so it's all good. Cool, so again those are all hitting the frets, but we haven't got them tensioned up yet, so that's what we're going to do as we tune. Okay, so we've got making sure all those are sitting nicely in their grooves there in the nut. Now we're going to get our tuner. Okay, so this is definitely a time for using a proper tuner that we're going to plug in. It's not really a tuning by ear job. Cool, switch that over to bass, make sure my volume's up. Cool, and the tuner's not even picking that up because it's going to be too low. That's just gone to low B, which would be my low string on a 5 string. So that one's at 4E. 3A. Okay, so I don't need to be too accurate at this point because these are going to take a lot more tuning yet. So that's a B. So I'm just going to get them roughly in the right place. It's got a long way to go now. So you'll see sometimes I do the ear tuning thing just to get a rough idea of where I'm up to. So as you tension each string, because it's pulling more tension back on that neck, it's going to make the other ones flat. Okay, because you've tensioned them up with the neck in one place, and then as you tension the others, it's going to pull that neck forward, and then it's going to make the other strings loose. Okay, but there's another process to do here. So that's all in tune. But if I went and played this now, okay, it would go out of tune very quickly, and that's the point where people make that mistake and go, oh yeah, you know, new strings, yeah, keeps going flat. Oh, it'll sort itself out. Cool. So this next process, especially, well, actually on both guitar and bass, but with the heavy strings on the bass, we can be a bit more sort of heavy on the strings. And one of the things that we're doing, because these strings are probably not going to stretch quite as much as a guitar string will because they're so heavy, but we want to make sure that they're nice and tight up here. Okay, so we've kept tension on them as we've done them up, which while we're up there, see how they all look nice and tidy sitting on there? Cool, there's no big mottled mess. There's no string ends sticking out because they've all been centered down the middle of the machine head. Cool, so that's the way they should look. You don't have strings crossing over each other or anything like that. You don't have great big lumps on there. You got a couple of good solid winds on there. Okay, so that's all by getting that length right. And you'll notice now that those strings aren't rubbing on those frets anymore. Okay, because now the tension's on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the string. I'm going to start down at the bridge, so we'll start with this low E. I'm going to grab under the string and I'm going to pull it up as far as I can. So go like that so you can see what I'm doing. Obviously as I near the center I can get a lot more pull on it. And I'm just going to pull that all the way along to the top. So up to the nut there. There's a point you've got to let go of it because your fingers don't fit. And I'm just going to do that on each string. Cool. So you wouldn't do this with a high E string on a guitar because you could probably snap it with your fingers. Okay, there's a different way of stretching those that we'll look at when we do them. Similar but different. Less violent. Cool, but this is a good way to get it done. Cool, and then when I've done it once, I'm going to quickly tune it up again. Okay, because now they're all just a bit flat, but they're sort of near the right place. So it's going to be quick and easy. Cool, and then I'm going to do it again. And what you can do is actually go backwards and forwards on it. Each one. So you'll see I'm actually lifting that string up quite a long way. And as I do that, it's not only stretching the string, but it's pulling the tension on it around that machine head, making sure it's pulled as tight as it can be. So just doing each string, and then I'm going to retune it. Cool, so at the moment most of the higher strings are staying pretty tight. Just this low E is still going a bit flat. So I'm actually going to go through all of them again, because the last thing you want to do is go and jump up to play and have the thing going flat on you in the middle of the song. So what I'll do when I do strings is I'll do them like I am now before I practice. So after I've done this video, I'm going to practice for probably an hour or something, and make sure I've really played on the thing, and then I'm just going to repeat this process once again, and then tomorrow I'm playing it on stage. So I know when I get up on stage that this thing's not going to go flat on me. And sometimes the next day I'll even do it just once more, once the heat gets on it with park and lighting and that sort of thing, just to really make sure. Cool, so that one I've just gone a little bit sharp actually. We'll see what happens as we tighten these. Cool, so here's a couple of things that we need to look at to check. So like I say, I'll do this again after I've practiced on it for an hour or so, giving it a good run-in. Okay, so one thing we want to check for is playing our first fret on all the strings and making sure that we're not getting any fret buzz. And I'm going to play it quite hard. The harder you play it, the more likely you are to get a bit of buzz. So if I hit that really hard, I can get a bit of buzz there. But I've got to really hit them to get that. The other thing I want to look at, it's the best way to look at it that way, is the height of my strings down here. Okay, so as I come down here, sometimes you'll look at a guitar or a bass like this, and these things will have a massive gap between the string and the fretboard. Okay, so that can be a balancing act between bridge height. Okay, so bridge height on this is set with these little Allen key fittings here. Okay, to actually lift each string up and down. Okay, but I've got this set up so that's all set right. So it's a balance off between that and the truss rod in the neck. Okay, so that working those is going to change that string height, so that's going to affect this buzz here. Okay, I don't need to adjust my truss rod at the moment. Okay, which I suspected I wouldn't, because I think what I did was when I put the last time before those strings, I had these strings, and then when I put those ones on, I don't think I changed my truss rod. Okay, which means now it's right. But if I did need to change it, undo the screw up there. So this is something I would do if I was getting a lot of buzzing in that first fret. The first fret's just the most common one to get that buzzing on, because it's that far away. Because the other thing is the open string. But once you fret that first fret, you tend to get a bit more. Cool, so down in there, if I can get the camera on the right angle. Can't really see it, probably because it's dark. But down in there is an Allen key fitting. Okay, so different basses, they'll be different size. I've got this T-handle thing. It's actually off a set of roof racks, but it just happens to be that size. So that fits down into there. Into the end of that. easier if you look at what you're doing. And then it's a bent rod, okay, so whatever angle it sits on is going to change the tension on that neck. Generally you don't need to turn it a long way, so generally your turn might look something like that. Okay, but it's not something, you're not like doing it up or undoing it, you know, you're just talking about a little bit of a turn. Okay, and then what you would do is make sure you're in tune again, try through that, play around the neck and make sure it's right. Cool, and then you can screw that cap back on. I won't do that for the sake of time. Now the other check I want to do, so these are things, if you're not confident in doing things like truss rod adjustments and that sort of thing, just take it into your music store and get them to do it for you. This is one of the things that they're trained to do. They will generally charge you to do it, but especially if you're not confident, it pays to get it done professionally. So the other thing to do is at this 12th fret, because my neck starts again at the 12th fret, so these are my open string notes, is to check the tuning. Cool, and my tuning there should be the same as it is on the open string, as it comes on the tuner. Okay, so that adjustment is in our fine tuning, okay, which are these ones here, which slide backwards and forwards to slightly adjust that string length. Okay, but this is pretty good, so I'm not going to play with that at the moment. It's one of those things that if you don't need to move it, just leave it where it is. Cool. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? Yeah, and again, that might be something that, especially the first time, you want to get a professional guy to do for you, and then just say, hey man, can I watch you do it? Show me how to do it. Cool. Okay, so I hope this has helped. Like I say, I'm going to go and practice on this now, and then I'll repeat that stretching process, and then it'll be all good. This thing will stay in tune. The thing that will affect it is heat. Hot days and cold days, because metal expands and contracts with heat and cold. You go and chuck it on stage under a bunch of par cans for an hour, the strings are going to heat up, and generally these low strings will go slightly flat. Cool. So I'm not saying your guitar will never go out of tune. You need to tune your guitar every time before you play, but it'll hold pretty well. Cool. Hope this has helped you.